Imagine stepping out of a small wooden boat into just a raging ocean storm.
Oh, wow, setting the scene right away.
Yeah, the waves are crashing violently against the hull, the wind is howling, and yet instead of sinking into the freezing water, your foot hits the surface and it feels like solid concrete.
Right, it actually holds your weight.
Exactly. For thousands of years, humanity has looked at that specific story and called it a divine miracle, right? Something completely outside the laws of nature.
A total break from reality.
Right, but the philosophical text we are diving into today makes a massive, just deeply provocative claim. It says it wasn't a miracle at all.
Which is wild to think about.
It really is. It claims it was just physics.
Mm.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a profound framework laid out in a text by Swifeng titled Faith is Truth, Love is Life.
It's quite a title.
It is. And our mission here is to take two of the most intimidating, massively complex concepts in human history, truth and life, and see how this author distills them down into highly actionable, almost mechanical processes.
Yeah, mechanical is definitely the right word for it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how these grand ideas are completely redefined, we have to look at existence not as like a series of random events, but as a rigid, perfectly balanced equation.
And that equation starts with a complete redefinition of what we consider to be truth. Because normally when we hear that word, we immediately picture an external fact.
Right, like a historical date or a math equation.
Exactly. We think of truth as this hidden treasure we have to uncover, or some objective law that exists entirely outside of us. But this framework actively strips away all of that ethereal external baggage.
It grounds it, right.
Yeah, it grounds truth entirely in the mechanics of human thought. The ultimate claim here is that truth is essentially God's way, but practically speaking, the text states that truth is faith.
Wait, they are one and the same?
Literally the same thing. They are equated.
That completely flips the script on how we normally talk about these concepts. Usually, people contrast the two, They say, well, you have your faith, but I rely on the truth.
Right, the classic science versus religion debate.
Exactly. So to equate them means we need to get very, very specific about what faith actually means in this context. Because we aren't talking about blind belief here.
No, not at all. It's not about ignoring evidence or just, wishing really hard that something is real.
Right. The language used in this text is incredibly precise. It's almost industrial. Faith is described directly as a state of resonance of the soul.
I love that phrase, resonance of the soul.
Yeah, and it's called a meticulous thinking structure, a perfect symmetric system that reacts instantly with the universe.
Yes, and we really need to pause on why the author borrows so heavily from physics and architecture to describe theology.
Because it sounds like engineering.
It does. By using terms like meticulous structure and symmetry, the text is arguing that the spiritual realm has literal physics. It has mass and structure, just like physical matter.
It just operates invisibly to our eyes.
Exactly. So faith isn't a passive emotion you just feel in your heart. It is an active, perfectly balanced state of internal cognitive alignment.
It's positioned as a divine attribute, right? Like the ultimate pursuit of the wise.
Yes, but functionally, mechanically, it's an architectural blueprint for human consciousness.
I love this idea of internal alignment. It makes me think of tuning an old analog radio.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. If you want to listen to a specific jazz broadcast, you can't just stare at the radio and broadly hope to hear music.
Right, you have to actually turn the dial.
You have to physically reach out and turn that dial until you hit the exact frequency of the broadcast. You have to achieve literal resonance with the signal.
And if you're off by even a fraction.
You don't get jazz, you get static. So in this framework, faith is tuning the dial of your mind to the exact frequency of truth.
Exactly.
But I do have to ask, if faith is defined as a perfect symmetric system and a meticulous structure, does that mean this philosophy views faith as a rigid psychological science rather than, a mystical religious experience?
What's fascinating here is how it brilliantly merges the two. It completely dissolves the boundary between structural cognition and divine alignment.
So they aren't mutually exclusive.
Not at all. Achieving this precise internal symmetry is the mystical experience. You are tuning your psychological structure to a divine frequency.
Wow.
Yeah, when your internal structure achieves perfect symmetry, without the contradictory static of doubt, you are physically manifesting truth.
So it's scientific in its mechanics, but deeply mystical in its outcomes.
Spot on.
But, an empty structure doesn't do anything on its own. A perfectly tuned radio still needs a broadcast to matter.
True.
So how does achieving that internal symmetry actually alter the external physical world. Because if we look at the historical examples this framework gives us, the real-world effects are absolutely staggering.
They really are.
Like, take the New Testament story of the woman who had suffered from a terrible bleeding condition for decades.
Right, that is a prime example in the text. She had been suffering for years, and she was cured instantly simply by reaching out and touching the edge of Jesus's garment.
In the middle of a crowded street, no less.
Exactly. But the crucial takeaway the author emphasizes isn't about the magical properties of the garment itself.
Right, it wasn't a magic cloak.
No. I mean, dozens of people were likely bumping into Jesus in that crowd, but they weren't miraculously healed of all their ailments.
So what was different about her?
What healed her was the absolute perfection of her internal structure at that exact moment.
Yeah.
Her faith was a perfect symmetric system.
So that internal resonance caused an instantaneous physical reaction in the material world.
Exactly. Her body healed because her cognitive structure commanded the physical reality to align with it.
That is wild. And then we see the exact opposite happen when that structure collapses, which brings us back to Peter walking on the water during the storm.
Right, the boat story.
Yeah. At first, he actually succeeds. He steps out of the boat, his confidence is absolute, and the water literally holds his weight.
His internal symmetry is totally intact.
But the exact moment he looks at the massive, terrifying waves crashing around him, he starts to sink. Jesus pulls him up and calls him a person of little faith. But how exactly does doubt break the physics of the water in this framework?
Well, doubt introduces contradictory data into the cognitive system.
Oh, like static on the radio.
Exactly. If your brain is simultaneously holding the structural belief, I am walking on water, and the panicked reactionary belief, I am going to drown, the system loses its perfect symmetry.
It fractures.
It fractures. And in this philosophy, a fractured cognitive antimatter structure cannot support physical weight or manifest reality.
So the doubt didn't just make Peter emotionally afraid.
No, it mechanically broke the physics of his reality. If you maintain the structure of faith, you float. If you break the structure with doubt, you sink.
If you're listening to this right now and thinking, well, okay, this sounds a lot like standard manifestation or The Secret, just envisioning what you want.
It's so much more than that.
It really is. The author's taking it a massive step further. You aren't just attracting things to yourself, you are mechanically rebuilding the world around you based on your structural expectations.
Which is a huge distinction.
Right, and we see this explicitly when the text connects this mystical resonance to the Pygmalion effect in modern psychology.
Yes, the Pygmalion effect. That's the well-documented psychological phenomenon where higher expectations lead to an actual increase in performance.
Like with teachers and students.
Exactly. If a teacher truly fundamentally believes a student is a genius and treats them as such, that student statistically performs better.
They rise to the structure provided.
Right. And the author, Shufeng, applies this directly to his own interactions. He actively calls people masters or angels.
He is providing the energetic blueprint for them.
Yes. And if the person believes it, if their internal structure achieves resonance with that title, they elevate and literally become that thing.
But there's a story here about a Zen master that I really want to push back on.
Oh, the disciple story.
Yeah, the master wants to reward his wildly loyal disciple after 30 years of dedicated service. So one morning, he respectfully greets the disciple and calls him Buddha.
A huge honor.
Massive honor. But the disciple denies it. He lacks faith in himself, he assumes he is unworthy, and because he rejects that resonance, he completely fails to achieve enlightenment.
It's a tragic ending.
It is, and the text seems to lay all the blame on the disciple. But wait, is that fair? If the master sets the expectation and provides the blueprint, shouldn't the master's incredibly powerful structure overpower the disciple's doubt?
You think so, right?
Yeah. Why is the disciple's lack of faith the deciding factor?
That is a great question, and it highlights a strict rule in this framework. The reason the master's structure can't just override the disciple is because you cannot force symmetry onto someone else's cognitive architecture.
Oh, so you can't tune someone else's radio.
Exactly. The master can broadcast the perfect frequency of a Buddha, but if the disciple refuses to tune his own dial to receive it, the signal just bounces off.
Wow.
Yeah, the failure wasn't in the master's transmission. It was in the disciple's refusal to align his own internal structure. The text is blunt. If you don't acknowledge yourself as a Buddha, your structure remains asymmetrical.
And enlightenment is mechanically impossible.
Precisely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because the text doesn't just leave this as some high-minded concept for monks, saints, and ancient miracles.
Right, it brings it right down to earth.
It brings this universal law of physics all the way down to a random Tuesday in a normal household. It applies this exact same mechanism to an everyday marriage.
The marriage example is so practical.
It is. The argument is that if a wife has absolute, structurally sound faith in her husband's abilities and character, that household experiences harmony and their actual social and economic status will rise.
Because she's maintaining the symmetry of the home.
Exactly. But if she is constantly doubting, complaining, and introducing asymmetry into the home, it brings instability, ruin, and literally tears the family apart.
So whether you're miraculously curing an illness, achieving supreme enlightenment, or just trying to have a peaceful dinner with your spouse, the underlying physics of belief are identical.
It truly is a universal application. And, that leads us to the next massive paradigm shift in the text.
Right, moving from faith to life.
Yes, because if faith is the architectural structure that shapes our reality, the blueprint of truth, then what is the actual substance that fills that structure?
Because an empty building is just a cold skeleton.
Exactly. The text offers a completely different metric for what gives this structure its ultimate quality, and it redefines the concept of life entirely through the lens of love.
It does, and the definition provided for life is quite radical. Life is redefined here as an antimatter structure with spirituality.
There's that physics terminology again.
Right, but again, we have to look at why it's being used. Antimatter in this context doesn't mean something out of a sci-fi movie or a particle accelerator in Switzerland.
So what does it mean?
The text is asserting that the soul, the essence of who you are, has actual substance, mass, and geometry. It is invisible to our biological eyes, but it is as real and structured as physical matter.
It just operates in the spiritual inverse. And the author uses some incredibly colorful Chinese idioms to explain how obvious this invisible structure is once you know how to look for it.
The idioms are fantastic.
They really are. He says to those who understand, it is as glaringly obvious as a louse on a bald head.
You literally cannot miss it.
Right, but to those who don't understand, it's like Granny Lou entering the Grandview Garden.
Which is a famous literary reference.
Yeah, it's about a bewildered country bumpkin who is totally lost, wandering around a high society mansion having absolutely no idea what she's looking at.
It's a brilliant contrast, because if you are stuck viewing life purely as biology, just flesh, blood, firing neurons and a heartbeat.
You are Granny Lou.
You are. You're wandering blindly through a maze, completely missing the true architecture of existence.
Right.
But once you realize life is this invisible geometric antimatter structure, the truth is glaring.
Like the louse on the bald head.
Exactly. And the core thesis of this section is that the perfection, the resilience, and the ultimate quality of this antimatter structure are determined purely by one thing: love.
So, if faith builds the framework, love is the molecular glue that holds the symmetry together.
I like that, the molecular glue.
It's the premium material that fills the blueprint. We see this in the text's ultimate examples, which are Jesus and Buddha.
Right.
They possessed perfect lives, not because they were physically indestructible or wildly wealthy, but because of their vast, selfless love.
Jesus willingly shedding his blood out of love for humanity.
And Buddha giving up unimaginable royal luxury, a palace, and immense power to endure immense physical hardship.
Preaching for 49 years solely to relieve human suffering.
Right. Their structures were perfect because they were filled with absolute, boundless love.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that love in this philosophical framework is not a fleeting emotion.
It's not just romance.
No, it's not a feeling you get on a good date or a Valentine's Day card. It is a literal purifying force.
Okay.
It is the energetic currency that perfects the symmetry of your antimatter structure. The more boundless the love, the more refined and indestructible the structure becomes.
Wow.
And this brings us to the existential weight of this entire philosophy. Once love is established as the purifying force of your actual soul structure, we have to look at how the universe categorizes and rewards that purity.
And this is where the cosmic scale of this text gets genuinely awe-inspiring and honestly a little terrifying.
It gets very intense here.
It does. Because the universe described here is not just one big, vague mixing pot where everyone ends up in the exact same place after they die.
No, it is highly organized.
It is a highly structured, profoundly rigid hierarchy consisting of 36 dimensions of space.
36.
Yeah. The text claims that someone with a Buddha's eye, an awakened, clear perspective, can actually see these layers clearly.
We're talking about the highest realms like Elysium.
Right, Elysium, the 10,000-year world, and the 1,000-year world. Then you have the middle layers.
The human realm, where we are right now.
Yep, along with the animal and plant kingdoms.
Mhm.
And then it goes all the way down into the darkest, heaviest realms, the underworld, the frozen layer, and the fiery layer.
We really need to sit with the gravity of that cosmic justice system, because the sole differentiator for where a life form exists within these 36 dimensions is the breadth and depth of its love.
That is the only metric.
The only one. Not your intelligence, not your bank account, not how much you suffered, and not your adherence to specific religious rituals.
It's love.
Just love. The capacity of your love dictates your physical placement in the universe. It is an automatic physical reaction to your purity.
And conversely, creating hatred makes your antimatter structure dense and heavy.
Exactly, guaranteeing descent into the lower, fiery layers. And it isn't a punishment handed down by an angry god, you know?
It's just gravity.
Yes, it is just gravity pulling a heavy object down to its natural resting place.
The analogy used to explain the sorting mechanism is so striking because it is starkly industrial.
Oh, the oil refining analogy.
Yes, it compares the sorting of souls to the process of refining crude oil. When you pump crude oil out of the ground, it's just this thick, messy, undifferentiated sludge. But when you put it through a refinery, it separates automatically based purely on its purity.
Just like the 36 dimensions.
Exactly. The most refined, purest parts rise to the very top and become aviation gasoline or light oil. The slightly less pure layers settle into diesel, then kerosene.
And the heavy stuff drops.
The heavy, thick stuff filled with impurities drops all the way to the very bottom and becomes asphalt, which we literally pave roads with and walk all over.
It's a brutal image, but very clear.
It is. The universe uses the scales of love to instantly reveal the true grade of a soul, exactly like a refinery separating gasoline from asphalt.
Exactly. Your placement is dictated by your density.
Yeah.
And this leads to one of the most challenging, really countercultural arguments in the entire text.
Oh, this part.
Yeah. To prove this point about boundless love, the author heavily critiques the concept of romantic exclusivity.
He does.
He states that lovers who look deeply into each other's eyes and say, "I only love you," are actually being incredibly foolish.
So, what does this all mean? Because I have a real problem with this part of the text, and I want to push back on it.
Go for it.
Telling people that focusing their love intensely on their spouse turns them into the spiritual equivalent of asphalt.
It sounds harsh.
It goes against basic human biology, evolution, pair bonding, everything. How does the author justify breaking apart the fundamental building block of the human family, monogamous romantic love, just to ascend in these dimensions? It feels like it's punishing humans for being human.
This raises an important question, and it is undeniably provocative. But the author isn't saying that loving your spouse is a sin or a bad thing to do.
Okay, then what is he saying?
He is saying that limiting your love exclusively to your spouse is a structural flaw.
Limiting it.
Yes. Think of it like putting a speed limiter on a high-performance engine, suffocating its potential output. In this framework, boundless universal love is the fuel for dimensional ascension.
So it's about capacity.
Exactly. If you say, "I only love you," you are drawing a tiny, rigid circle around your capacity for love. You are intentionally narrowing your antimatter structure.
Wow.
To rise to the higher dimensions, like Elysium or the 10,000-year world, you must love God, nature, humanity, and even your enemies.
You have to spread it out.
Right. Limiting your love makes your structure dense with exclusivity. It makes you heavy, and heavy things drop to the bottom of the refinery.
That is a wild paradigm shift. It frames exclusivity not as the ultimate romantic ideal we see in movies and read about in poetry, but as a severe spiritual limitation.
You aren't supposed to hoard your love in a private vault.
You are supposed to broadcast it to the entire universe to make your structure light enough to ascend.
That's the core message, yeah.
Well, we have covered an incredible amount of ground today, unpacking a worldview that completely reshapes the mechanics of reality.
It really makes you rethink everything.
It does. This text presents a universe where faith is not just a comforting belief you hold on to when things get tough, but the meticulous structural alignment of your mind that allows you to tap directly into the physics of truth.
Beautifully said.
And love is not just a warm feeling. It is the expansive, purifying energy that dictates the physical geometry of your life and determines exactly where you land in those 36 dimensions of space.
It's all connected.
So, as you go about your day, I want you to really consider your own internal architecture. Are you operating with little faith in your work, your goals, or your relationships, allowing contradictory data to fracture your symmetry and sink you beneath the waves?
That static on the radio.
Exactly. Or are you hoarding your love, keeping it locked away for just one or two people, and making your structure too dense to experience the wider resonance this framework describes?
That's a lot to reflect on.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final puzzle to mull over on your own.
Oh, I like a good puzzle.
It's a thought experiment that builds right on top of the cosmic physics we just explored. If our reality is shaped by the precise, unwavering structure of our faith, and our place in the 36 dimensions is determined entirely by the boundless breadth of our love,
Okay.
what happens to a person who possesses immense universal love for everyone and everything but absolutely zero faith in themselves?
Oh, wow.
Where exactly would a highly refined, perfectly pure but structurally fractured soul land in the universe's refinery?
That is a real paradox.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. We hope it sparked something new for you, and we hope you have a truly great day.